everyone, and welcome to this month's SNOMED CT Research webinar. I am Susie Roy, the Customer Relations Manager for the Americas and Research Engagement Lead at SNOMED International. I host the SNOMED CT Research webinars and welcome you all to join us today. You will notice that everyone is currently muted. If you have any questions as we go along, please go ahead and enter your questions into the Q&A box. And at the end of the presentation, we'll have some time for some Q&A. This webinar is being recorded and all of the slides and the video will be made available at the end of today's presentation. So for those of you who are new, welcome again. Just to let you know that in addition to the SNOMED CT research webinar, we also have the SNOMED CT clinical webinar and the implementation webinar. And all of those can be found on snomed.org/web-series. Here you'll see that we focus a little bit more on the clinical implementation side and the clinical uses of SNOMED CT, whereas of course in the research webinar, we focus on SNOMED CT research, either on SNOMED CT as a terminology or utilizing SNOMED CT in various research. So we have lots of events and all kinds of interesting webinar for anyone who's interested in our SNOMED CT community. And just to let you know that actually in just a couple of hours from now, we will have our next SNOMED CT clinical webinar. So at 19 UTC, please go ahead and join our clinical team as they host Dr. Lynette Sadlier, a professor from the University of Otago from Wellington, New Zealand, who will be presenting SNOMED CT in epilepsy, New International League Against Epilepsy, Seizure, and Epilepsy Classifications. That should be a good one. And just to plug next month's SNOMED CT research webinar on Wednesday, December 15th, you can join us with Peter Kremlin, who is going to be presenting Is SNOMED CT Just for Healthcare? This promises to be a really interesting presentation where Dr. Kremlin will discuss the potential of using SNOMED CT to manage and integrate with other non-healthcare domains. And of course, if you miss those webinars or any of our others that we've held in the past couple of years, you can go to our SNOMED International YouTube page, YouTube channel, sorry. You can subscribe and you can see all of our previous events. Sorry about this. And I guess I'm trying to move myself along here. You can join our SNOMED CT research reference group by emailing me. This is just a push notification where I inform you of upcoming research related news. And so for now, our main event. I'm very pleased to introduce Dr. Rohit Kate, who is an associate professor of computer science at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. His focus on research is on the applying of natural language processing techniques to automate analysis of biomedical and clinical text. His recent focus has been on leveraging available biomedical knowledge resources to improve techniques for extracting computer processable knowledge from clinical text. And his research interests also include applying machine learning techniques to predictive analytics for medical applications. And with that, Rohit, I will send it over to you so you can let us know about obtaining clinical term embeddings from SNOMED CT.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you for the introduction and thanks everyone for joining. And is my screen shared?
Not yet.
Okay.
Can hear you. Great.
Is it fine now?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, okay.
You're good to
All
go.
right. Okay, thank you. So as Susie said, so my research interests are in natural language processing and machine learning and applying them for biomedical applications. Now, as Susie also mentioned, one research theme I have is on developing methods to leverage biomedical ontological resources or knowledge resources for biomedical NLP. And SNOMED City is one such biomedical ontology. And I think it has a huge potential for biomedical NLP. But I think it has been underutilized. So those who actually use SNOMED City for natural language processing, they typically use it more like a terminology. So they use it like a map between clinical terms and IDs. They don't really use the full potential of SNOMED City, that it has concepts and they have relations, and then you can obtain uh, meaningful representations for clinical terms and then use that for things like automated processing or automated reasoning. So I think SNOMED City has been underutilized in biomedical natural language processing. So one of my research theme is to actually change that and kind of use SNOMED City for biomedical natural language processing. And today, what I will talk about is one such project I have been working on and obtaining clinical term embeddings from SNOMED City. So I will begin with talking about what are embeddings, and then I will talk about how to obtain those from SNOMED City and how to evaluate that. So what are word embeddings? So they are basically numerical vector representations of words. So you have a word like dog, you want to represent that numerically, and now you don't want just one number to represent that. So typically you have a vector of numbers to represent that. Here I'm showing like 7 numbers, and it typically it is like a few hundred such dimensions, and you represent dog like that. And similarly, you will represent all words in numerical forms. And the idea is the words which are similar in meanings should have similar embeddings. And we will talk about what do we mean by similarity between embeddings. Like if you find like cosine similarity between them, they should be similar. So for example, if you have another word cat, and meaning wise, it is very similar to dog in a way because they are both pets. So it will have a different vector, but it should be something similar to dog. Now, why do we need this numerical vector representation? This is mainly needed if you want to apply neural network and deep learning based methods for natural language processing. For example, these methods, they they are numerical methods, so they only work with numerical representation. So you have to represent your input in some numerical form. And so this is one way to do that. And one good thing about these embeddings is that it can then generalize across word meanings. For example, if you're training a natural language processing system that saw a dog during training, but never saw a cat during training, but later when you are applying that and you see a word cat and you have its embedding which is similar to dog, then it will be able to do the right thing. It won't take that as something it never saw. So it helps it generalize across word meaning. That's another advantage. And of course, these methods take numbers as input, so we have to represent words in numerical form. So just to kind of illustrate on that example, so this is sample word embeddings of a few words, and just assume these are in 2 dimensions. So then if it is in 2 dimensions, we can plot them in a 2-dimensional plot. And as you can see, the similar words will be nearby. If it is a good word embeddings, cat and dog will be nearby, man and women will be nearby, and so on. And similarly, the words which are dissimilar, they should be far away. So like man, woman, and bottle cup, they are very far away. So this is what we want. We want word embeddings in a way so that similar words are nearby and dissimilar words are far away. Now, how do we obtain such embeddings? so that we represent words in numerical forms and we get that effect that similar words are nearby and so on. So the most common methods to obtain word embeddings are corpus-based methods. The idea is you begin with a very large text corpus or several such corpus called which are called plural is called corpora. And the basic premise is if two words are similar, they will occur in similar context. You know, if you have dog and cat as pets, you will have similar words, feeding them or petting them, things like that. They will be nearby. And from that, you can computationally find a representation which will be similar. There's a quote from a linguist. You will know a word by the company that it keeps. That is kind of a guiding principle behind corpus-based methods. Now, there are several such methods. We won't go into them. But there are two categories of such methods. One actually counts co-occurrences with other words. How many words co-occur with a word within a particular window in a corpus. And if two words are similar, they will actually co-occur with same type of words. And then you can actually derive their word embeddings, which will be similar. Another method which is actually currently more popular is to actually train a neural network, which is a machine learning method which can do predictions. So you train it to predict a word from its nearby words. Like given a sentence, you want to predict a word based on its nearby words. And in that process of training, word embeddings are learned in that process. So so there is like a layer in which the words get numerically represented in order to do well on this task. If neural network is trained to predict a word from nearby words, in that process, you end up learning word embeddings, and then you can use that as your word embeddings. So these are the most popular methods for learning word embeddings. And these are general domain natural language processing methods, but you can actually use these. They have been used for clinical domain as well. So these have been used to obtain embeddings for clinical terms and words. However, there is a drawback of these corpus-based methods. One is similarity, which is what we want for the word embeddings. It is only indirectly learned by the corpus-based methods. For example, consider two terms, pneumonia and pneumoconiosis. Now, medically, we know they are actually similar because they are both inflammatory disorders of lungs. So we know from our medical knowledge, they are similar. Now, how will a corpus-based methods learn embeddings for them, which will be similar? In order to do that, they will have these two terms will have to be present in the corpus in similar context several times. Then only the corpus-based method will pick up that these two words are similar. And this may not always happen. And there has been a recent study by Schultz and Zurich that corpus-based methods do not adequately represent medical terminology. So they don't always pick up these type of similarity. Now, that's where ontologies come into picture, and that's where we see Snowmed coming into picture. So ontological resources directly encode such semantic properties. So we just said both of them are disorders of lungs and inflammatory. So that will be actually directly encoded in Snowmed. So we'll see an example slide later. And so in general domain, you have an ontology called WordNet, which relates words by their relations. In clinical domain, you have the most comprehensive ontology, Snowmed, in which term is represented in terms of its relations with other terms. So why not actually use these resources to obtain embeddings? So that's what this work is about, and that's what I will be talking about. A very quick, one slide introduction showing how Snowmed terms are represented. And I think this audience knows this well. So a concept is Snowmed is represented in terms of its relations with other concepts. For example, you have a concept viral meningitis. It will have an ID. It will have some other synonyms. And by this ellipse, I actually mean this is a concept. So in Snowmed will tell you it is an infective meningitis. So it has an is a relation with infective meningitis, which is itself another concept. It will have its own relations as well. It is also a viral infection of the central nervous system. Its causative agent is virus, and associated morphology is inflammation, and finding site is meninges structure. So SNOMED-CT will tell you that this is how concepts are there in SNOMED-CT. And there are, it's one of the most comprehensive clinical ontology with more than 350,000 concepts. So somewhere in SNOMED-CT, there will be the term pneumonia. That's what we talked about. And it will tell you it is a disorder of respiratory system, associated morphology, inflammation, finding site, lung structure. Somewhere there will be a term pneumoconiosis, and it will have 3 of those exact same relations. It will also have another relation, causative agent as does, and that makes it pneumonia different from pneumoconiosis. But as we can see, it shares many relations with pneumonia. So directly SNOMED-CT will tell you these terms are related. And they are similar. And then why not obtain embeddings directly from SNOMED-CT? So similar concepts have similar relations in ontologies, and ontologies are invaluable alternate resources for obtaining embeddings. And this has been used in general domain. So WordNet, which is an ontology in the general domain, has been actually directly used to obtain word embeddings using graph-based methods. So can we similarly use SNOMED-CT to obtain clinical term embeddings? And this is what the talk is about. So this is what we want to do, obtain embeddings from SNOMED-CT. But however, there are some challenges. So unlike words in WordNet, clinical terms are actually typically multi-word. So for example, you have terms with 4 or 5 tokens in it, like chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, acute respiratory distress syndrome, and so on. Many terms are multi-word. So it will be, it is a challenge to obtain. If you obtain embeddings for the entire term, then how do you obtain embeddings for each individual words? And you need embeddings for individual words to do natural language processing. The second challenge is how to obtain clinical terms, how to obtain embeddings from clinical terms which are not listed in SNOMED-CT, but which are composed of known words. And this happens quite often. We have clinical term which may not be in SNOMED-CT, but we would want its embedding. And another challenge is, so I said people have used WordNet to obtain word embeddings, but using graph-based methods. But what those graph-based methods give you are actually embeddings for clinical concepts. So again, distinguishing between clinical concept and clinical term. So clinical concepts are the things I showed in these ellipses. These are the clinical concepts, and clinical terms are the ones we have listed as their terms, like viral meningitis and all those synonyms. So those graph-based methods will give you embeddings for clinical concepts. Then how do we obtain embeddings from clinical terms and words from that? And that was not a problem in WordNet because the concepts themselves were words, so it was actually a direct thing. But that's challenging in SNOMED-CT. So in this work, we actually develop methods for countering those challenges. So in this work, we first obtained clinical concept embeddings using graph-based methods, just like they did with WordNet. But then we present a novel method to obtain clinical term as well as word embeddings from clinical concept embeddings, going from concept embeddings to term embeddings. And then we show evaluation of those clinical term embeddings on on benchmark clinical term similarity datasets and compare them with corpus-based embeddings. Okay. So as I said, the first thing we do is obtain clinical concept embeddings. So these will be the embeddings of the concepts. And from that, I will show a new method of obtaining clinical term embeddings. But before that, we talk about how to obtain clinical concept embeddings. For these, we use existing methods, graph-based methods that can give you concept embeddings. So we use 2 different methods, and I will very briefly talk about each one of them. The first one I just call method 1. It is a matrix-based method, and the basic premise is similar concepts will have many short paths between them in the graph. So this is a graph-based methods. It exploits the fact that if two concepts are similar, they will have many paths between them in the graph. And this is the one they had used for WordNet, and they got good results. So we adapted that method for SNOMED City. Very briefly, what is this method? The first thing you do is, so you have a graph like a SNOMED City graph with concepts as nodes and their relations between them as edges. You first obtain what is called an adjacency matrix for the SNOMED City graph. So you have this graph as I show in that picture with ABCD connected like that. You create a matrix from that. You have rows and columns with those nodes, and you put a 1 in the matrix if there's a relation between them. Like A and C are related by there's an edge between them, so you put a 1 there. If there's no edge between them, you put a 0 there. And that is called an adjacency matrix. And we represent that with M. And if you square that, if you do matrix multiplication and you compute M square, that would actually represent all paths of length 2. So this M represents paths of length 1. You square that, it becomes paths of length 2. You cube that, it becomes paths of length 3, and so on. So if you want to compute the paths between one node and another node, so this mg, that this summation I am showing, I plus alpha m and alpha square m square and so on, that will count all paths between two nodes in that matrix mg, and they use alpha decay factor which is less than 1 to kind of downweigh very long paths. So shorter paths get higher values or is kind of given higher weight than longer paths. And once you do that, you get if two concepts are similar or two nodes in the graph have are similar, they will share many paths between them. Just like we saw in case of pneumonia and pneumoconiosis, they had those three paths shared between them. So in that summation of matrix products, we found that going up to 5th power was sufficient. You don't really need to all the powers. So like path length 5 was sufficient. And what you get is that matrix mg will have several, each row will have as many entries as the number of concepts in SNOMED City, like 350,000 plus. And you don't want embeddings to be that large. So we use some dimensionality reduction method like a singular value decomposition or SVD to reduce that to 200 dimensions. And we choose 200 dimension to make it comparable to other methods that we use. And those 200 dimensions become the embeddings for the concepts. So this is method 1. Method 2, this is called random walk method. The premise is similar terms will have similar context in the graph. Again, this is a graph-based methods. If two concepts are similar, the nodes around them will be similar. And this has been also used for WordNet, and actually it has been also used for SNOMED City. But that work, they did not obtain clinical term embeddings from concept embeddings, which is what we do, and I will present that next. And they did not evaluate these embeddings for clinical term similarity. Now, very briefly, what is this method? So again, you have the graph to begin with. So you have concepts with their edges between them. What you do is you kind of simulate random walks on the graph. So you go over those edges. So you can go from A to B, you can go from B to D to C to A, and C, A, B, and so on. So you create these random paths. And again, you go from one node to another with some random probability, and you end up getting these paths. And then you actually take these paths as if they are sentences in a corpus. So in a way, you have simulated a corpus, and these paths are like sentences, and these concepts are like words in the sentences. And then you use usual corpus-based methods, based on co-occurrences or the neural network method, and then you obtain embeddings, and then these will be embeddings of those concepts. So that's briefly method number 2. And in our method, we actually directly use the embeddings provided by Agarwal et al. And they had 200 dimensions as well. Okay, so now we looked at those two methods for obtaining clinical concept embeddings. But our goal is to obtain clinical term embedding. So both these methods that I talked about, graph-based methods, they give you embeddings for the graph nodes. And basically means they are giving you embeddings for the concept IDs. For example, you had a Snowmed concept, upper abdominal pain with that ID. Whether you use method 1 or method 2, you get an embedding out of that, like it will be 200 dimension, a numerical vector. But this is really embedding for the concept. Is as good as embedding for that concept ID. Because nowhere in those graph-based methods, they even looked at the clinical term like upper abdominal pain. They were completely based on the nodes of the graph. So you get embedding for the nodes of the graph. But again, our goal is to obtain term and word embeddings. So from concept embeddings, how do we obtain embeddings for individual words? So suppose I got embedding for that concept upper abdominal pain. How do I get embeddings for upper and for abdominal and the pain? What method I should use to get these embeddings? And this is actually opposite of the task one usually has. So typically one has embeddings for the words. And then the question is, how do I obtain embeddings for the entire clinical term? So this is typically the problem one faces, but this is actually interestingly opposite of that problem. I have embedding for the concept. I want embeddings for individual words. And secondly, how do I obtain embeddings for a new clinical term? For example, acute upper abdominal pain. This is actually not listed in Snowmed, but you can derive derive the concept. But how do I obtain embeddings for this clinical term? That is the second question. So we present a new method for obtaining embeddings for both words and terms from concept embeddings. So going from concept embeddings to clinical term embeddings. So what we do is we train a deep neural network to predict the concept embeddings from clinical terms. So I will show the architecture. So it will be trained to predict concept embeddings from clinical terms. So this is how it looks like. This is the neural network architecture. So we are trying to predict the target. So suppose I have embedding for this concept of upper abdominal pain. I got the embedding for this using one of those graph-based methods, and I have that embedding. So this neural network will be trained to predict that with the input clinical term. So I will give upper abdominal pain as input to the neural network, and it will be trained to predict the target concept embedding. So I have that output, that will be the target, and my input will be clinical term. And then I use an embedding layer. This is the embedding layer. And then I use GRU layers. I will briefly talk about what GRU is. And I have, again, these dimension of these embedding layer will be 200. And these are 600. Again, these are design decisions. Then there is a fully connected neural network in the end, and that will predict the target concept embeddings. And I will do this for all the clinical terms for which I have concept embeddings. I will also use all their synonyms. And in the process of training this neural network, it will actually learn embeddings for these individual words. So let me quickly talk about what that GRU is. GRU is gated recurrent unit. It is a well-known neural network cell. And this is a recurrent cell. And the idea of recurrence is you feed the output of your previous the previous output, you feed it back as input. So this is like input going into GRU, and that's the IT. So it generates an output from which is the hidden layer, so I call it HT, and it also takes the output that was there last time, which is HT minus 1. So this is called recurrence. And the idea is if you feed the output from last time back as input, it will try to remember the entire sequence, or whatever is the useful information over the entire sequence. So this is good for sequential input, like the term, you will give the term as word by word as a sequence. So this GRU has been found useful for processing sequential input. And then you can actually unroll that over time, which is easy to understand conceptually. So if I have like a 6 time unit or a sequence of length 6, this is how, if I unroll that, it will look like the output last time goes as input next time, and so on. And either each unit can have its own output, or the final one can have its output. And the one that we use in this method, only the final one has an output. And what I had shown earlier, this was actually the unrolled network. So now with that, as I showed in the network, so we obtain concept embeddings either by method 1 or method 2, and we use that as target, as I showed in that figure. So we use the corresponding clinical terms listed in Snowmetricity, as well as synonyms in UMLS. So we use UMLS to get some more synonyms of those concepts. And the embedding layer learns the embedding for the words. And once the neural network has been trained, you can actually read off the embeddings for these words from that embedding layer. And again, it uses 2 GRU layers. So we had 2 of those layers. And so that once the neural network has been trained, not only you obtain the word embeddings from the embedding layer, but the entire network can be used to actually predict embeddings for new clinical terms. So for example, we had that term acute upper abdominal pain. You will feed that term to the neural network. Again, this is unrolled over time. You will feed it one word at a time. And this network was trained to predict the concept embedding from the terms, from the words of the term. And that's what it will be used to do now, once it has been trained. And this network will then predict the embedding, and that will be the embedding for acute upper abdominal pain. So that's how it solves both the problems. It can give you embeddings for individual words, which is trained through the embedding layer, and it can give you embedding for any new term. So any new term, just feed it to this network and it will give you the embedding. Okay, now so with that method, we obtain clinical term embeddings from clinical concept embeddings, as well as word embeddings. But then how do we evaluate clinical term embeddings once we obtain? How do we know whether these are good or not? So there are common methods to evaluate embeddings. Some of those methods are indirect. Basically, you use them for some natural language processing task and see whether it leads to performance gain, or you can compare embeddings, which one gives you better performance. Those are indirect methods. There are also direct methods. You can directly evaluate them on a similarity task, and that's what we did. And we use some similarity clinical term similarity data sets which are out there, which are used as benchmarks, and then you can evaluate embeddings on that. So very briefly, I will talk about that. So how are these data sets created? What you do is you begin with some set of clinical term pairs, like renal failure and kidney failure. So these are 2 clinical terms, and then ask humans or experts, like medical experts, to rate similarity between them. So give some human judge scores. Say between 0 and 1, it could be anything. It could be between 0 to 100. Let's say it's between 0 to 1. So they are very similar. They will be rated like 1. So metastasis, adenocarcinoma, they're somewhat similar. So they will be rated like 0.8. If they're really dissimilar, they will be rated something close to 0. So you create data sets like that, and researchers have created such data sets. And then once you have a data set like that, then you use your embeddings to create similarities. Then you predict the similarities using your word embeddings. For example, you will compute cosine similarity between metastasis and adenocarcinoma. That will be the output of your embedding for similarity. And then you compute correlation coefficient between all those numbers, the human judge scores and the scores obtained by your embeddings. And if that coefficient is close to 1, that means your embeddings were good. If it is close to 0, they perform poorly. Let me briefly talk about cosine similarity that I mentioned. So how do we find similarity between two vectors? One common method for that is use cosine similarity. It is computed as a normalized dot product. So you have two vectors A and B. You compute the dot product between them. You compute the dot product within the same vectors, and you normalize that, and that's a score between 0 and 1, and you get that is taken as similarity between two vectors. So what that represent is, if you have two vectors in your n-dimensional space, you will get so the cosine similarity actually compute the cosine of inner angle between them. So if two terms or two embeddings are similar or two vectors are similar, it will be close to 0. So the cosine will be close to 1. Otherwise, they will be close to 0. So again, so you have some data. You have data set of clinical term pairs like renal failure, kidney failure, and a few of these. You have humans rate their similarities, and these will be numbers. And then you obtain similarities using your word embeddings, using cosine similarity, for example, and then you get some numbers as well. And then you find correlation coefficient between these, and you get a number, and that will be between 0 and 1, and that will represent how well the word embeddings capture the similarity between clinical terms. Okay, so we used 5 such data sets which have been already created. And again, each data set has a list of clinical term pairs and human judge similarity scores. And we compute the cosine similarity using embeddings and compute correlation coefficient between the human judge scores. So these 5 data sets are listed here. The first 4 have been around for a while, and they have been used extensively as benchmark. But you can see some of them have actually very few term pairs. And recently, a new data set has been created called EHR-REL-B, which is several times bigger. But this is actually not exactly for similarity, but it is for relatedness. But it has been also used to evaluate similarity. So coming to results, so these are the results on those first 4 data sets. And for comparison, we use results from Wang et al. Paper. These are the corpus-based embeddings. So we are comparing the SNOMED-CT embeddings with corpus-based embeddings. And they have 4 different methods to obtain corpus-based embeddings. The first one was obtained using clinical notes. So that large corpora was of clinical notes. The second one was medical literature. And the glove is embeddings from general domain using co-occurrence-based method. And Google News is again embedding from general domain using the neural network method. It's also known as word-to-vec method. And then we compare them with our SNOMED-CT embeddings, and these are the matrix method was used first, and then we obtained the clinical term embeddings. And then similarly, random walk method was used for obtaining concept embeddings, and then we obtained term embeddings from that. And these are the results, and these are the Pearson's correlation coefficients. Again, closer to 1 is better, and less than the smaller it is, the worse. Then you can see the random walk actually obtained the best results compared to all the corpus-based methods, as well as compared to the matrix one. Again, this is not directly random walk method. This is we apply random walk and then obtain concept embeddings, term embeddings using the method I showed. So these were on the first 4 data sets, and that's the 5th data set. And for all other results, we directly took the results from the Schultz et al. Paper. So that paper introduced this data set, and then it actually compared many publicly available embeddings, clinical term embeddings. And they are all kind of corpus-based methods. And our method obtains using SNOMED-CT, and this is the one with the random walk. It did second only to one method. So it did fairly well, better than most of the methods, only less than one method. And remember, this is not exactly similarity data set. This was actually a relatedness data set. So basically, this result shows that you can obtain very good clinical term embeddings from SNOMED-CT, comparable to corpus-based methods. Now, those who may know current trends in natural language processing, there are something called contextual embeddings. There's a method called clinical BERT that can obtain you embeddings which are called contextual embeddings. If the word is ambiguous, it will be its embedding will depend on its context. So you may ask, why didn't we use contextual embeddings or compare with those? So actually, they did not do very well on these benchmark data sets. We tried clinical BERT and it did not get good results. And I think a possible reason could be that here we are using clinical terms by themselves without any context. And those contextual embeddings need context around it to give proper embeddings. We also tried to actually fine-tune clinical BERT to predict concept embeddings. Even that did not help. Again, those who know how the BERT system works, you can fine-tune it to a task. That did not give us good results. Possibly because this fine-tuning is on a very different task. So this BERT is trained on corpus-based task, and we are trying to use it for a very different task to predict concept embeddings. And second reason could be that this is the BERT type of system has a very large architecture, and they are typically trained on gigabytes of text. So it's hard to retrain it on a very different task with limited data. So that could also explain that. So coming to limitations and future work. So although our embeddings captured semantic similarity very well, we found they do not capture linguistic properties, which is not surprising because they were never trained on corpus. We trained them simply on SNOMED-CT graph. So they can pick up the similarity, but not linguistic properties of words. And like what word will follow another word. So if we tried this on an NLP task for named entity recognition, where you have to identify the entities like treatments or disease names and things like that from text, that's called named entity recognition. It did not do any better than if you train a method to do named entity recognition, and in the process it learns embeddings. So basically, it did not do very well on named entity recognition, which is not surprising because for named entity recognition, you need some linguistic properties, like what word usually follows another word. You need that information encoded in the embeddings, which is not happening in our embeddings. So in future, it may be possible to actually combine methods, the combined embeddings obtained from two different methods. So we are obtaining embeddings from ontology, which captures semantic properties very well. And there could be embeddings from corpus-based methods which capture linguistic properties very well. So in future, there may be a way to actually combine this type of embeddings, and which will hopefully do well on these tasks as well. Now, I should mention we actually tried some simplistic things like just concatenating the embeddings, or use one initialize with one embedding and then train for the other embeddings. But those simple things did not give us good results. So I think it will require some proper method to combine embeddings from these two different sources. So another possibility of future work is of evaluating these embeddings on other tasks. So again, a task like clinical term normalization, information retrieval, where you are given a term, you have to find similar terms from documents with similar terms, or auditing ontologies, and so on. So these are the tasks in which you don't need linguistic properties. These tasks are based on purely based on the semantic properties of the terms. And so the embeddings obtained using SNOMED-CT should be good at these tasks. And another thing is possibility of future work is to obtain better concept embeddings Both those methods, matrix-based or random walk, they were graph-based methods. They were not even using relation types. So they were just using these two concepts are related by an edge. So there's an edge between them. That's all they were using. They were not using the what type of edge is there or what are the semantic types of those nodes. So they are actually, so these concept embeddings did not actually use full power of Snowmelt-CT. So in future, it may be possible to obtain, to improve these methods of obtaining concept embeddings, from which we later obtain term embeddings. Another possibility of future work, and I need to mention this, which is related to work I have done, I did recently. And recently I developed methods to automatically convert clinical terms into Snowmelt-CT concepts. And why we want to do this? If you could do this, if you have a clinical term in a document and you can convert that into Snowmelt-CT concept, then the full power of Snowmelt-CT becomes available to you. So you can actually do automated reasoning. You can find the related concepts, or you can do reasoning on top of that. So that's what Snowmelt-CT enables. And I should mention this method could also come up with post-coordinated concepts. Like you could have a concept which is not there in Snowmelt-CT, and you give a term like I showed an example, acute upper abdominal pain, and that method could actually generate a concept corresponding to that term. So I'm giving an example here. Your meningococcal carditis, and that method will actually output. So that goes in as input, and it will output a Snowmelt-CT concept. It will, again, Snowmelt-CT concept means you find out its relations with all other concepts. So it will tell it is a disease, it's a associated morphology is inflammation, and it's an infectious process, and finding site is hard, and all that. Positive agent is that. So you give input like this, it gives you output like this. So I developed a method for that, automatic conversion from clinical terms to concepts. Now this method was actually probabilistic method. It was based on computing probabilities. It did not use embeddings. It did not use the modern deep learning methods. So, so that's another possible future work. Let me actually illustrate how that method works. So it would take that clinical term. First, it would determine the semantic concept, the concept, the type. So, for example, that's disorder, and this will be done probabilistically. So I had method, a probabilistic classification that will give you that, and then consider all potential relations for that. Wherever the disorder is like the first argument for that relation, and then it will find the related concept for each of those relations with some probabilities, and then it will use a threshold. If the probabilities are less than 0.3, for example, then forget that, only take the ones which are more than 0.3, and those are then the related concepts, and that's how you obtain Snowmelt-CT concepts. That was the method, and that was all probabilistic method. So possibility for future work is to actually use clinical term embeddings and deep learning to drive the automatic conversion. So the conversion we saw here, this process could be improved using term embeddings and using a deep learning neural network based method to do the same thing. Another possibility and kind of interesting one is that process, that neural network that will do the conversion, that could be actually could be designed in such a way that clinical term embeddings come out as a byproduct. So we can have an embedding layer to do that conversion, and in the process of learning this conversion, you will get clinical term embeddings. And this was actually trained on existing Snowmelt-CT terms and their concepts. It was trained on that, and then it could do this conversion for new terms as well. And here I'm saying this could be driven by neural network and term embeddings. And in fact, term embeddings, clinical term embeddings could be learned as a byproduct of this process of conversion process of training method, a system for this conversion process. Okay, to conclude, so Snowmelt-CT can be used to obtain clinical term embeddings that capture semantic similarity. And we showed methods for that. So the method begins with graph-based methods to first obtain clinical concept embeddings. And then we presented a method to obtain term embeddings from those concept embeddings. And these clinical term embeddings obtained from Snowmed using that method was found to perform well and actually better than corpus-based methods on many similarity benchmark data sets. And but they don't capture linguistic properties, so which is captured by corpus-based methods. So in future, the two sources of embeddings could be suitably combined to obtain better embeddings. So that's to conclude. Thank you very much, and I'm open to questions. And these were the references. And you can also email me if you have any questions later.
Dr. Kate, thank you so much. That was absolutely interesting. And it is interesting because we usually do, and a number of times at our research webinars, we've had someone with, clinical text, and then they extract these semantic terms from that. So to kind of flip that on its head and get the clinical term embeddings actually from Snowmed, it was interesting. So
Thank you.
Do see we have actually a number of questions in the Q&A, and I want to make sure that we have time for those.
Yes.
So I'm going to jump right in. So first is from Kai. This is very interesting research. Thank you for sharing. My question is, do your methods use the order of the words in the terms of the concept, or is that not important?
Yes, it does use the order of the concept, because we are using the GRU, which takes the input as in a sequence. So the words go in as a sequence. So it is taking into account the order of words inside the terms. And that is definitely important. Order is important because that represents the term. So it does take into account the term.
And there is a follow-up comment from Pratibh, who says, try masking in multigrams for better results with Snowmed CT.
So again, so we don't need multigrams because we are directly using the sequence of the terms. And I'm not sure what the masking means there. If you mean to train the neural network, we can look into that. But if it means for the order, then there's order already there that we're taking into account.
Yeah. Pratibh, if you wanted to clarify if Dr. Kate didn't fully answer your follow-up there. From Anthony, how does the GRU embedding approach compare to the way newer neural network techniques such as Snowmed 2 VEC, or even the latest techniques such as BERT or GPT? Are there any specific advantages that GRU has over them? Good question.
So one thing I would point out is the Snowmed 2 VEC. That method actually gives you concept embeddings. It does not give you term embeddings.
Mm-hmm.
So it gives you embeddings out of the graph, not the clinical term. So Snowmed 2 VEC is again, we could use that to obtain concept embeddings, and from that we can obtain clinical terms embeddings. So so now the second one. So I already had a slide on BERT. So again, we actually tried BERT and it did not do very well. And I point out some reasons. It could be because BERT is just a very big architecture to be trained on this. And also BERT has been trained on a very different, it is pre-trained on a very different data or very different task of corpus-based related task. And this is a very different task. Maybe that's why it is not working. But we can again explore that more. But we tried that and it did not do very well. That's why. And GRU actually worked fine.
Great. And next from Shiphead. Why not compare the Snowmed CT embeddings with clinical BERT and similar transformer-based embeddings? And I think you answered that,
yeah,
but
so
if you wanted to elaborate.
Yeah.
Okay. Next from Anthony again, how would this technique work with words/phrases that are ambiguous? Example, fit, attack, episode.
Yeah, so these are actually not these are not contextual embeddings. So again, for those you have BERT type of method. So these are actually not contextual embeddings. for ambiguous words, you will actually end up with only one embedding. But I would point out that clinical terms as multi-word terms are typically not ambiguous. So you have individual words are likely to be ambiguous, but when you have, uh, acute upper abdominal pain, it's not ambiguous. It's not. Uh, so for most part, as clinical term embeddings, non-contextual is actually fine. But otherwise, I would say is the for individual words which could be ambiguous. So that's a limitation. It does not give you a contextual embeddings. For that, you would need BERT type of methods, which give you contextual embeddings. And I should also point out that concept embeddings are actually they are really context themselves are not, sorry, concepts themselves are not ambiguous. These are the words which are ambiguous, but the question was about words. I'm just pointing out the concepts are not ambiguous. Their concepts are concepts. So the graph-based methods are fine for them. But when it comes to word embeddings, then that's a limitation.
Okay, that kind of similar to where I was kind of thinking, actually, this isn't in there because I didn't write this in here, but for your methodology, you utilize the UMLS with SNOMED CT. And of course, the UMLS is based on lexical matching and not necessarily on clinical matching. So I was wondering if, and I think that how you just kind of answered this would kind of, like if you took the approach of utilizing an ontology or some sort of other terminology that we have clinically mapped to and with, if there would be some sort of difference.
Yes, so this is, I would say, limitation of the method. So if you have a clinical term which is ambiguous, like two terms in UMLS refer to two different concepts, this method will ending up training both of methods to predict different concepts, both of those terms to predict different concepts. So it is not taking care of ambiguity. So that's true.
I'm going to just check the time. Okay, so we have 2 more questions in 3 minutes, so I think we can do this. From John, since multiple primitive concepts may have the same synonym, were primitive concepts from SNOMED excluded from this work?
Yeah, so this is a good question. So again, the synonymy, again, it is we can't handle this ambiguity there, as we mentioned earlier. So we did not actually exclude primitive concepts. One thing we did, though, was to normalize all the concepts. And by normalization, I mean the SNOMED CT concept normalization, where every fully defined concept is written in terms of they're related to only primitive concepts. So we did do that, but otherwise we did not exclude the primitive concepts. So that graph-based methods, that graph was actually, every concept was already normalized in that graph. So that's why we kind of, in a way, reduce all the fully defined concept to in terms of their primitive concepts.
Yeah, that was a good answer. That was a good question, good answer. We can wrap it up with this last question here from one. How could one use the relation types within SNOMED to generate better graph embeddings for the target label?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So one thing is maybe those graph-based methods themselves could be modified, like those random walk methods. You are getting those sentences as the sequence of nodes. Maybe you can interleave the relations between them. I'm just thinking that could be one way to do that. And the second is towards the end, I talked about that task of converting clinical terms into SNOMED CT concept. And that requires taking into account the relations. So maybe when you train your network to do that, and you make embeddings as kind of byproduct of that will actually take into account the relation type. So that could be another way to do that. And again, this is open to, actually, there could be other ways to do that. So this is definitely something to for future work.
You have many, many years of awesome, really interesting potential new experiments to definitely try out. Really, really cool work. Thank you so much, Dr. Katti. And thank you all for joining us today. As I said, today's webinar was recorded, and the slides and the video will be made available later this week. And in 2 hours, we have our next clinical webinar for the month. And other than that, join us next month, and we'll see you next time. Thank you as always.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining, and thanks to Susie for organizing everything and giving me the opportunity to share my research.
Oh, thank you.
Thank
It
you.
was my honor. This was great. Thank